garden of shadows.
Hi my angels, it's Hailey, Reese, and first and foremost, happy National Paranormal Day. I am so excited to be on here celebrating National Paranormal Day with all of you guys. Whether or not you truly believe in the paranormal, just being here and just hearing the stories of haunted spaces all across the world is amazing and means so much to me. So thank you so much for being here for today's video. I figured for National Paranormal Day, there is nothing better to do than to dive into one of the most haunted places in the world, and that is Myrtles Plantation in St. Francisville, Louisiana. Now, Myrtles Plantation has actually been highly requested from so many of you for so long, and recently more than ever, you guys have been highly requesting that I dive into the ghosts that haunt Myrtles Plantation, the history behind Myrtles Plantation, and what makes it not only one of the most haunted places in the world, but also one of the most terrifying to spend the night. So without further ado, let's just dive right on into all that is Myrtles Plantation, the history behind it, the spirits that are said to haunt it. But before I get into that, make sure you guys go ahead, let me know in the comments below if you have any requests of any haunted locations or paranormal stories or anything of that sort that you want me to dive into here on my channel. Make your requests down below because, like I've said a billion quadrillion times recently, I'm going to be uploading 5 videos a week on this channel and 5 videos a week on my vlog channel, which isn't necessarily a vlog channel, it's just a second channel. But without further ado, let's just dive right on into the very beginning of Myrtles Plantation. So the very beginning of Myrtles Plantation, and I utilize that in quotes because it wasn't initially called Myrtles Plantation, begins with a man by the name of David Bradford, aka better known as Whiskey Dave. He was a leader of the Whiskey Rebellion, and in 1796, he actually built what he then called Laurel Grove, but would later become Myrtles Plantation. Now, this home would later be handed to his daughter, Sarah Bradford, and her husband, Clark Woodruff, and this was around 1817, 1820. I read a couple different articles. Some say that it was given to them in 1817, some say that it was given to them in 1820, but regardless, it was around that time period that it was handed over to Sarah and her husband, Clark. Now, eventually it said that they decided to sell the plantation and its slaves to a man by the name of Reuben Gray Sterling. Now, he and his wife actually remodeled the plantation, and when they were done with their remodeling, it had like doubled in size. And it was at this point that the name was changed from Laurel Grove to Myrtles Plantation. Eventually, the Winter family would own the plantation as well, which interestingly enough, it's William Winter who is the only reported and documented murder within Myrtles Plantation. However, we'll get into how many there is believed to be in just a moment. From then on, there would actually be many owners of the plantation, many of which would have tragedies strike or strange things happen. And that whole thing kind of leads into another theory that we'll get in a moment, but that's the very brief, just skimming over history of how it jumped from person to person, because this video we're really going to be focusing on the specific hauntings of the property, and so I really wanted to familiarize you guys with all of the different names and the different owners and kind of how it jumped from one owner to another. But like I said, that's a very brief history of how it went from person to person. So who exactly are the spirits that are at Myrtles Plantation, and what exactly occurred in order for this space to be deemed one of the most haunted spaces? Well, first and foremost, Myrtles Plantation has 22 rooms, and there is a supposed 13 known and named spirits that are active and live within those walls, and there is said to have been around 10 murders within this home. However, many will argue that that could simply be kind of a wives' tale or a legend, because there really is only one known documented murder. However, that's not to say that there weren't other murders, especially under the circumstances that the legends claim people were murdered under. It would kind of make sense that it was kept under wraps and not really documented. but it is said that there was around 10 murders that took place in this specific space, and that there is 13 known spirits, although many believe there are many, 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 many more spirits that haunt that space, because when people go to visit Myrtles Plantation, they'll actually see or have experiences with spirits that don't line up to the 13 that are supposed to be in there. So people believe that there's just 13 that make their presence more known, but there's more that are actually active within those walls. Now, like I was saying just a few moments ago that we would get into in a moment why there was so much tragedy in this space, people believe that perhaps the property was built on top of burial grounds and that it was cursed and doomed from the very beginning, that it wasn't even necessarily haunted or spooky to begin with, that all of these deaths and murders and tragedies occurred in this property because it was built upon these burial grounds and it was cursed. So I really want to dive into the individual spirits that are said to haunt the space and kind of the stories behind them. But I really want to make sure that you guys know that not all of these stories and tales are confirmed. It's what people believe, it's what people who work there and owners that have been there believe, but I cannot confirm that there was actually 10 murders, because like I said, there was no documentation of it. And I can't confirm personally that the things that were supposedly, or the things that supposedly occurred to these spirits really did. This is just simply what they've said occurred, and I'll make sure to let you guys know at which points things were actually documented and 1,000,000% occurred. So just bear that in mind as I go through all the different spirits, but I'm sharing with you guys the legend behind Myrtles Plantation and what was said to have happened to each individual spirit. What's really interesting about diving into Myrtles Plantation is that Myrtles Plantation has a lot of photographic evidence of these spirits. I have never in my life looked into, thus far, any haunted location like this that has so much photographic evidence that they claim to truly be these spirits showing up in people's images. And actually, they seem to encourage people to take photos when they're there to see what they capture in their images. So I will be inserting images that are said to be the spirits that I'm about to talk about with you guys, and make sure you guys let me know what you think, because some of them are so realistic, it blows my mind. But the very first spirit that I want to talk about is that of a little girl named Kate, who passed away in the home of yellow fever at the age of 3 years old. Now, it was said that they brought in a local voodoo practitioner by the name of Cleo, and that Cleo tried to do absolutely everything to save Kate. However, despite all of her efforts and despite all of her voodoo medicine, Kate still passed away. The legend has it that after Cleo's failed voodoo attempt to save Kate, they had her hung on the property, and that her spirit is still there. In the room that this all occurred in, people have awoke to someone or something doing voodoo over them. And actually, something that I found really interesting was when watching the Ghost Adventures episode on Myrtles Plantation, they really wanted to do some sort of voodoo ritual on the property, and the owners were very, very stern on the fact that that was just absolutely not going to be something that was going to happen, and that they prohibited any use of any sort of magic within the property. So no tarot cards, no voodoo, none of that. And actually, I will link the Ghost Adventures episode down below for you guys so you guys can check it out. It's really interesting stuff, and they investigate the whole entire thing. But in essence, they wanted to kind of not provoke or challenge, but see what would occur if they were to practice voodoo on the property and it was prohibited. So Kate, the little girl who passed away, and Cleo are actually two spirits that are commonly seen by those that investigate or spend their time on Myrtles Plantation. Now I'm gonna insert a picture that was taken, and many believe it's that of Kate. Now brace yourself, guys. This is literally like, if this is truly an authentic image, it is chilling how detailed it is. So I'm gonna insert that right here, and this is what many believe to be Kate, although I should note, there are tons of children's spirits in the property of Myrtles Plantation. In fact, there's many times that those who work in Myrtles Plantation have claimed to see children wandering around, or see children walking up with guests, or see children that just disappear, or they have no idea who the heck the children are. Tell me that picture isn't so detailed. Like, when I first looked at that, I was like, no way. There is no denying that specific image whatsoever. So let me know what you guys think of that. Now, there's also said to be a spirit that walks or crawls up the stairs and stops at the 17th step. Some have said this is William Drew Winter, who is actually the only documented murder within Myrtles Plantation and also is the father of Kate, the little girl that we just talked about. He was shot on the front porch and according to the legend was actually able to make it up 17 steps where he collapsed and ultimately died. And like I said, you guys, this was actually a documented murder and nobody really knows for what he was murdered for. Some people speculate that maybe he was murdered for what he had done to Cleo, while many just don't really know. However, it was documented that he was in fact murdered. Now, possibly the most well-known spirit at Myrtles Plantation is that of Chloe, who was said to be a slave owned by Sarah and Clark Woodruff. The legend has it that Chloe was forced to be a mistress to Clark, and that she was often worried that perhaps his wife may find out. Well, that part is often changed between the legends. The one part that people stand by is that when she was caught listening with her ear to the door one day, they had one of her ears cut off as punishment. From then on, it was said that she wore a green turban to cover up her missing ear. Now, it is said that Chloe baked a cake filled with poisonous leaves in order to get back at Clark. However, it was claimed that her plan backfired and the only people that died was Sarah and her 2 children. It was said that after this, Chloe was hanged on the property as well, and that she is seen now in a white apron and a green turban. Now, I want to make something really clear about Chloe is what ended up happening as far as Chloe poisoning the mother and the 2 children is very consistent throughout all of the versions of Chloe's spirit. But there are different versions of the leading up to it. I read one where Chloe was trying to heal the kids and accidentally poisoned them with this leaf. I read one that she meant to just poison the husband for forcing her to be a mistress, and that in return that plan backfired and the mother and children were killed. And then I read another that she wanted to kill the wife before the wife found out what went on. There are so many different versions, but the one thing that stays true throughout all of this is that Chloe had poisoned the mother and the 2 children and was hanged on the property. Now, Chloe has been seen quite a bit on the property, and interestingly enough, there's one notorious image that was taken, I believe, for insurance of the property or to gauge the space between 2 buildings on the property. And when it was blown up and looked at, I believe it was years later, but I may be mistaken on that, it looked as though there was a slave woman or a slave girl hidden between the homes. Chloe has kind of been notorious at Myrtles Plantation for showing up in pictures, so I am going to insert these images of Chloe, or what is believed to be Chloe. And once again, you guys, brace yourselves because these images are so lifelike and so realistic. So let me just insert those here. Crazy, right? Absolutely crazy how realistic these images are, and it sends chills. Sends chills down my arm. Now, a mirror located in the house is said to hold spirits in it, and more specifically, it's said to hold the spirits of Sarah Woodruff and her 2 children, but it's also said to just hold spirits in it in general, and that sometimes when you look into it or you take images of it, you'll see faces peering back at you. Now, one of the main reasons that people believe this mirror in particular is haunted is because you were supposed to cover mirrors after death. Because if the bodies were in the home and somebody had passed away and the mirrors weren't covered, the spirits could wind up trapped within the mirror for eternity. According to the legend, after the Woodruffs were poisoned, so Sarah and the 2 children, that specific mirror may have been overlooked, and it's believed that the mirror trapped the spirits of Sarah and her children. Occasionally, it's said that not only will you see faces peering back at you, but you may see handprints and things of those sorts coming from the mirror. Now, mirrors in general are paranormal hotspots. Mirrors in general contain a lot of activity, and there's many people that believe mirrors are actually portals and vortexes to the other side. So that's a very interesting theory. When I was also looking at the mirror, it looks as though there's like some sort of smudging on the mirror that looks like a female face. I don't know, the mirror is very intriguing nonetheless overall, and I think that it's quite possible, especially with all the paranormal activity that occurs at Myrtles Plantation, that that mirror is some sort of a hotspot. Today, Myrtles Plantation is a full-service bed and breakfast, and they in fact encourage and embrace their haunted history. They embrace the legends, they embrace and stand by the fact that it really and truly is haunted. And paranormal investigators from all across the world travel to Myrtles Plantation to investigate it. And I can truly say with confidence, I would love to go to Myrtles Plantation and investigate it and see it for myself. But that is in essence a summary of what Myrtles Plantation is, kind of the haunting history behind it and the spirits that occupy it. I really had an interesting time digging into Myrtles Plantation, so thank you so much to all of you who suggested it. I'd heard of Myrtles Plantation a while back, but recently you guys have been extra requesting that I dive into the haunted history behind it. So thank you guys so much for that. Like I said at the beginning of today's video, make sure that you guys let me know if there's any other haunted locations or spooky things you want to see me dive into. Once again, happy National Paranormal Day. And that is it for today's video. If you guys are new to my channel or you are just not yet subscribed but you do enjoy my videos, make sure you go ahead and click that subscribe button, and please give this video a big thumbs up if you did enjoy it. Remember, my loves, do all things with kindness, and until next time, I love you guys.